Welcome to the podcast Blind Faith, a podcast exploring where faith and blindness and how they sort of interact. My name's Mark Madavan. It's my privilege to host this podcast brought to you by Torch Trust for the Blind. In each episode, I'm chatting to a different person who's encountered blindness, and we're just exploring that and faith, and well, you'll see what happens. I want to just welcome my guest for this episode, which is Matthew Horspool. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a privilege to be here.
That's great. Thanks, mate. And so what I'm asking our guests to do is to just, first of all, just to say, what's a little bit of your experience with blindness? How does blindness fit into your life?
My life wouldn't be my life without blindness, I don't think. I was born blind. To this day, we don't really know why. There was a theory at one point that it was to do with some pesticides. My mum used to go strawberry picking, and there was a theory that perhaps some of the pesticides on the strawberries caused it. There was actually, would you believe, a lawsuit, and some people did get some compensation. We weren't one of them. But I suppose, to me, I've never really questioned it. It's just been part of who I am and part of my identity. Every so often, my parents have questioned it, and I've gone in for tests and things, and they haven't really brought anything up that's of particular interest. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's normal, right? I was born blind. I know that other people can see, and goodness knows that comes with advantages, right? I mean, they can drive. Can you imagine?
Not well though. Doesn't it? I don't know.
Well, that's true. But I mean, yeah, I mean, to me, it's just normal, and it's my way of life. And actually, a huge part of my identity is being blind and being part of the blind community.
Yeah. Because my experience with blindness is I mean, I'm registered blind as well, but mine's been a gradual thing. So I've just been losing my useful sight. So your experience of blindness is very different from mine, because mine is, I can imagine, I know what things have looked like. Were you actually, I'm guessing, I don't know, in your imagination, do you imagine what things look like? Tell me, how does this work? You're proper blind, as I call it. So tell me,
I'm not faking it for the benefits.
No, I know.
Shh. No, it's funny. I've really only discovered this in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. But I would really have to describe myself as quite a visual learner and quite a visual thinker. I think in shapes and patterns and lines and dots. I always, if somebody asks me to describe my head and my brain, I would say it's made of train tracks with train stations. Different thoughts are connected. The thoughts of the train stations, and they're connected by the train tracks. And every so often, there'll be two thoughts that are not connected by anything, and all of a sudden, a train track will emerge in the middle and connect them up. And you think, oh my goodness, that's how those two are related. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I imagine things in dots and lines and very coarse things like that. I'm pretty good at imagining, I mean, COVID-19 was a horrible time for us all, but there were statistics published all the time about the COVID-19 pandemic. And, someone would say, well, if you look at the graph here, you can see blah, 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 blah. And I could actually, just based on the description of the data that people were giving me, through the press briefings and things like that, I was able to assemble in my mind a picture of what that graph would look like. And largely that was through touch.
Yeah.
I was thinking about tactile graphs and cork boards and pins, which is how we used to make tactile graphs at school. So things like that I imagine fairly well. Places and spaces, not a chance. I'm a terrible map reader. I can't make head or tail of them. I don't, I mean, I'm in this house now, and I've had a quick wander around, the first floor of the house. I've seen where the living room is, where the bathroom is, all of that sort of thing. I've got no idea. I'm not picturing any of that, and I don't picture what people look like, or no, nothing like that at all.
So it's interesting because though I'm blind, I'm actually a visual person. Which is a really weird thing. So I always describe things visually, but I guess I'm pulling from memory. And I get the graph things and the dots and the train station thing. That's a really good. I love different languages and I love illustrations, and I think that's brilliant. But it's fascinating. So some things seem quite detailed, and other things you're saying you just can't see. Because just a week or so ago, I was with my family in the Alps, and you're just surrounded by mountains, which apparently, in the past I remember being surrounded by mountains, so I just have to imagine what it is now. So, but you have no idea what it means to be surrounded by mountains, I'm guessing.
No, no idea. If it's a very small, section of an environment. So I remember once I was at Windsor Castle, was fantastic experience being at Windsor Castle. We'll come on to it later, but I'm a singer and I sing at Coventry Cathedral, and I had the opportunity to go down and sing at Windsor Castle, and it was great. And I remember walking up the steps. I forget where I was walking from and to, but somewhere on the campus, and I remember saying, "Oh my goodness, we must be at the top of the steps now because the walls disappeared." And the person guiding me said, "Well, that's right, but how do you know?" I said, "Well, because I can hear the wall, but now I can't hear the. I could hear the reflections off the wall, and now I can't hear the reflections off the wall." So I suppose through that, I was able to detect that we were in a fairly narrow passage, and that passage had expanded into an open space. So I can do it in small details like that, but no big picture stuff. I mean, I've no idea what being surrounded by mountains feels like.
Yeah. So I want a question that I've been asked. I'm sure you've been asked a zillion times. It's so as blind, are your other senses better? And I always go, no. I don't know. Is it different? I mean, I don't know. You may answer
Yeah.
differently.
Well, when I was 7, I had some hearing problems, would you believe? And that was caused by a fairly common thing at the time. There was a buildup of fluid, and they put grommets in, and it sorted it out. And I mean, it sorted it out for a bit, and now I have to go back and see a consultant every so often just to make sure it continues to be sorted out. So I wouldn't describe myself as hearing impaired by any means, but I also wouldn't say that I have anything like supersonic hearing. In some ways, in fact, I find that my hearing is worse than a sighted person, particularly. Let's say you're in a noisy environment, like you're in a big dinner somewhere. There's lots of people around, like a crowd or an exhibition or a conference or loud music or something. Quite often, everything in that starts to feel like background noise. So if somebody tries to talk to me, it takes me a while to actually tune in to what they're saying. So I'll miss the first few seconds of what they're saying. Um, just because I'm trying to work out, hang on, this isn't actually background noise. They really are talking to me. So I find actually sighted people are better at this because they realize visually that someone's trying to attract their attention.
Absolutely. Or, or someone asks a question and you ignore them and you're going, sorry, were you speaking to me? I
Yes.
find that so.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are times when we are trained to use our hearing to our advantage, or to use our sense of smell or our sense of touch to our advantage. I mean, I can read Braille, and perhaps we could come on to that a bit later in the podcast as well. But I'm sure most sighted people can't read Braille. And it's not to do with the fact that sighted people haven't been taught Braille. It's to do with the fact that a sighted person's sense of touch hasn't been honed enough to be able to differentiate between dots that are very close together. Um, and like I was saying about being able to hear when a wall disappeared, I mean, I don't do that consciously. There are some blind people who'll go around and click their tongue to find out what's around them. I don't do that. I don't find that I have good enough hearing to be able to do that. But I'm also sure that a lot of sighted people wouldn't think, even for that example of the wall disappearing, I'm sure a lot of sighted people wouldn't think to use their hearing in that way. And being attention to detail, I'm on a train station and I will hear the next train at platform 2 is the such and such a train. And 2 minutes later, a sighted person would still be saying, "Oh, what platform's this train going off?" I said, "Well, it's off platform 2. The announcement just said it like 2 minutes ago." "Oh,
I
did
think,
it? I
yeah, I
didn't
think
hear
we
that."
need to be purposely more. We listen a bit differently and
Mm.
different things. You okay? Two things. One is you've said several times. Maybe later in the podcast. The podcast isn't that long, mate. So we
Fair enough.
unfortunately we're not going to be able to cover everything. But I want to do if I can group them together, because I know that you are a tech and Braille consultant. So you go around helping people in that area. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Largely doing training. So I train people how to use specialist speech based and braille based technologies. And I also do, yeah, a bit of consulting. If somebody says what technology would be the right fit for me, then I don't do much of that sort of work, but I can do it if it comes along. Or we need to use this particular piece of software and we don't think it's accessible. What do you think we can do about that? And I might go in and have a quick look and offer an opinion.
a real practical question, which is, so if you go to different places to help different people, how? Because I know you don't have a guide dog, and so how do you get to places? How do you navigate? Let's be real practical. How do you navigate from A to B?
Yeah, okay. So a typical morning. I mean, let's take how I got here actually as an example of this. Um, I live in Coventry. I've lived in Coventry for about 10, 15 years, something like that. So I know Coventry really well. And when I moved into where I live now, I had somebody from the council actually came out and showed me and spent some time showing me, here's the bus stop, here's the shops, all the bus routes that I needed, all of that sort of thing. So I will get the bus from my house to the train station. And that was taught to me professionally by a mobility officer from the council. Um, so I can get myself on the bus to the station. When I get to the station, I make myself known to the station staff and I say, "Good morning, I'd like to get to Bristol Parkway via Birmingham New Street." I know my way around Coventry Station a little bit as well, so I'll generally make my way down to the platform and get on the train. And what happens then is they will call ahead. So Coventry will call ahead to Birmingham and say, "We've got a blind person going to Bristol." Birmingham will then take me off the train, guide me to the next train, put me on it, call ahead to Bristol. And then from Bristol, I'd have to make my own way then to my destination. And that would either be by taxi or I'd arrange for somebody at the other end to meet me, or if it's walking distance, what I can then do is on my phone, I have an iPhone and I can use Siri and I can say, get walking directions to whichever the place is, and it will give me walking directions. And I'll then just use my cane and follow.
So that's a lot of really good practical stuff that people need to learn and stuff. But I want to go a little bit deeper on that one because it's confidence in that. So I could probably have said this is what you're supposed to do, but actually doing it is, how do you get the confidence of walking around into new places and different places? Because I mean, I'll confess, I'm registered blind, and I always get people to help me. I always get someone that
Yeah.
my daughters did, my wife does. I get people to help me. So how do you get that confidence on
Yeah.
that?
Well, and I should say, actually, sometimes I do get people to help. If it's a really awkward journey, I might insist on, actually, I need you to come and meet me here because I can't figure these instructions out. Or if I need to get a taxi, I might get that taxi reimbursed through something like Access to Work. And that's sort of my way of getting help from people. But I think you don't start out magically just being able to do this. When I left school, I'd only really worked in controlled environments like the school and a little bit of the route home and things like that, and my route from home to church. So I started off just using the routes that I'd been taught. And then when I was at university, I needed to go or when I was at university, I wanted to go and see a friend of mine who lived at the other side of Coventry. It was going to cost me £10 in a taxi to get there, another £10 to get back. And as a poor student, I didn't have £5, let alone 20. So I decided that if I was ever going to go and see my friend Chris, I was going to have to just bite the bullet and learn to use the bus. And that was a huge motivator for me. Was you have to. You've got no choice in this.
And yeah, necessity often does
Yeah.
that. And I guessing that confidence builds
Yeah, it
as you do
does.
it. Okay.
So I started then thinking, well, I need to use GPS to help me with this. What I then did was use GPS, like Apple Maps and things like that. I started using that on familiar routes. I would say, right, okay, here's a route that I already know. I'm going to put the GPS on in the background, and I'm going to see what are the instructions that it's giving me, and how do these instructions relate to the route that I already know. And then I extended that route a bit. So I knew how to get to Asda, and I knew that there was another shop that I wanted to get to, kind of another sort of 2 or 3 minute walk away from Asda. So I could get to Asda on my own without the GPS, but I had it running in the background. And then I tried to follow the GPS for the rest of the route, and then gradually kind of built it up from there.
I mean, I think that build up thing is a really important thing because I think sometimes we think if I'm really honest, I see you navigating and that intimidates the heck out of me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it
No,
to
I know,
do
but
that.
I know you don't mean to. I know you don't mean to do that, but I think that's one thing with the wrestling with blindness is you see sometimes you see, well, here's a blind person who climbed Everest or who did this, and I'm going, I find it a struggle to get out of bed.
It's a big thing. When I went to RNC. I went to a college for the went to a school for the blind called Priestley Smith. I went to a college for the blind called the Royal National College for the Blind, or RNC. And I really felt this actually. I felt like I was not the best blind person in town. And I really felt like actually I'd see friends of mine sort of bombing up and down, outside in on routes they'd never done before and just kind of bumbling around. I mean, they weren't great. They'd get lost all the time, but they just kind of figure out
Yeah.
what to do. And I remember feeling really inferior actually, and really kind of like I was a failure almost. And I think really it's just about saying, well, actually, what do I need to do? What is my overall quality of life? Can I achieve in life what I need to achieve in life in order to have the quality of life that I want? And that will be different for different people. But actually, my quality of life is fine. I don't particularly care that I haven't got the mobility skills to, walk around on an open field and not get lost. I
Sure.
don't need to do that.
It's very impressive in what stuff you do. I know you're not doing it to impress. How you've said a lot of I've learned this and I've learned that. You did get some help. How much do you lean on other people to try to learn some of these and things and to gain confidence?
On a personal level, I don't feel like I lean on people terribly much. I suppose I do on a subconscious level. If the assistant staff weren't around at train stations, my life would be a lot more complicated, and I probably wouldn't be able to do nearly as much as I can do now. So from that point of view, I lean on people. Other than that, I mean, I just try and do what I can do.
Okay.
I rely a lot though on hearing what the other people in the community are doing, so and learning from them. So I'm not leaning on them on a personal level, but
Okay.
for example, there are other podcasts, would you believe? There are other podcasts that I listen to where blind people demonstrate technology, or
Okay.
demonstrate how they do particular things, and I've contributed to
Yeah,
those
yeah. And
podcasts as
I
well.
think that's really good because I think we need help from others, but sometimes we need that personal emotional thing, which I know Torch Trust does. But they also signpost you, I'm sure, to people like yourself. We said here, look, here's some practical things and here's some technical things because some people need that. I think we need more emotional help at times, and sometimes
Mm,
we just need more practical help at times. But let me jump to something else you mentioned in a few minutes ago is that getting to church. So how does faith and stuff fit into it? How is your view of God? Because I'm guessing from a young age you said you went to church. So where does God fit into your blindness journey?
yeah, you're right. I mean, church was just part of routine for as long as I can remember, really. I was born into a Christian family, Church of England, as it happens, and there was a Church of England church just down the road, and I was baptized and all the normal things that happen in the Church of England. And I didn't really feel like God really fitted into my blindness journey particularly. I didn't feel like he was just there. I mean, he wasn't there because I was blind, or he didn't cause the fact that I was blind particularly. I just sort of felt that he was there and present and what have you. And I did have a very strong sense of that. I was confirmed at a relatively young age. Um, I was really impacted by a lot of the ceremony of the Church of England, and I quite enjoy that as an expression of worship. I suppose for me, it manifests itself most in sort of knowing what to do. I feel like I have a really intuitive sense of what is right and wrong, what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do, what is the right decision. And I don't always know what that, why that is. Um, why did I decide to go to Coventry University? Well, I don't know really. I just had a really strong sense that going to Coventry University was the right thing to do. And that really is the extent of my faith, is just this really deep understanding that, if I listen, then I'm going to get that sense coming through. And I've chosen to believe that that sense is God telling me and guiding me, and really making sure that I'm on the right track.
Cool. I mean, so yeah, so I can hear that. And would you're involved with the local church still? I'm guessing.
Yeah, so as I say, I sing in the choir now at Coventry Cathedral.
Yeah.
So actually, I live close enough to the cathedral that you probably could call that the local church. It does actually have a parish still, but yeah, I'm involved in the choir at the cathedral. I get involved with other community activities there. was involved for a time with outreach into the diocese and into parish churches, and would quite like to sort of re-engage that involvement. So yeah, I do still have a lot of involvement
So,
with the church.
so your journey of faith is, it's very much you're walking, you feeling God's walking with you, and you're walking with God as you go through life. Basically, is it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, very
yeah.
much so.
If I'm asking my guests this question of, if you could go back to and speak to your younger self and say late teens, early 20s, what bit of advice, Matthew, would you give the young Matthew?
Almost flippant. I think I would just say, just keep doing what you're doing,
That's
because
fine.
I really feel like actually I've been tuned in. Like I say, I've been tuned into God, I think, for a long time. That almost feels like I'm blowing smoke, blowing my own trumpet. I don't mean for it to sound like
No,
that.
it doesn't at all. Because I think the truth is that each of our faiths are a bit different. Some people, it's just, myself is, I believe that God exists and He always has. And I even in my times of doubt, which aren't massive, I tend to talk to God about my doubt, which
Mm.
is really weird. So it's just He is. And as I explore more, and if your advice is, yep, mate, keep doing what you're doing, that's good. Because I mean, what's coming across is, you have a great confidence, which is brilliant, and you're still exploring and pushing and wanting to help others. And I think that's amazing, Matthew.
Yeah.
And our time is coming to the end of this podcast, and I just want to thank you for sharing and just that encouragement that we can be independent and we can do things, and it is a gradual thing. It doesn't just drop down and boom, you got the answers. What is your connection with Touch Trust? Have you used Touch Trust as a charity? Connected with them?
Well, yeah. So I first started using Torch services when I was very small. When I was 12, I needed a set of hymn books that Torch Trust happened to have in Braille, and so I bought the hymn books from Torch. And at that point, it was a very transactional relationship. I bought the books were good. I recommended the books to others, and that was about as far as it went. And then in my adult life, I actually worked for Torch. It was the second sort of full time, proper job that I'd had, having worked in a school for a bit, and then yeah, went to work for Torch in the sight loss friendly church team predominantly. But I also did some work with the technical team at Torch, and helped with setting up some of the Torch podcasts, and helped with we did a smart speakers guide to help blind people with smart speakers, and I had a lot of input into writing and recording that guide.
That's great. So I mean, Torch Trust doesn't. I mean, tries to emotionally help people on there, but some real practical things that you enjoy, but you teach on, and that's still hand in hand with Torch Trust and in relationship, which is great. Because sometimes we just need that emotional support, and sometimes we just need, how do I do this? And it's great to know there's people like yourself and others attached to Torch Trust that can do that. But thank you again so much, Matthew, for joining me, and I look forward to just connecting with our next guest in the next podcast. So thanks again.
If you are living with sight loss or support someone who is, then Torch is here for you. Get in touch at torchtrust.org.